Welcome to Work from the Inside Out, a podcast that highlights real-life stories, practical strategies, and best practices for transitioning your career from unhappiness and dissatisfaction to fulfillment, meaning, and joy. Now here is your host, career and executive coach, Tammy Guler-Loeb.
Hey everyone, I am really excited to introduce today's guest because she's actually been with me before on the podcast, Dr. Ruth Gotian. Dr. Ruth Gotian is the Chief Learning Officer, Associate Professor of Education and Anesthesiology, and former Assistant Dean for Mentoring at Weill Cornell Medicine. She is a globally recognized expert in mentorship and leadership development. Hailed by Nature, Wall Street Journal, and Columbia University as an expert in mentorship and leadership development, she was named a top 20 mentor worldwide. Thinkers 50 ranked her as the #1 emerging management thinker in the world in 2021, and LinkedIn recognized her as a top voice in mentoring in 2023. A semifinalist for Forbes 50 over 50, Dr. Gotian is a prolific contributor to Harvard Business Review, Forbes, and Psychology Today, where she shares insights on optimizing success with a focus on the mindset and skill set of peak performers, including Nobel Prize winners, astronauts, Olympic and NBA champions. She's also an award-winning author of The Success Factor and now the Financial Times Guide to Mentoring. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Ruth Gotian. Welcome, Ruth.
Hello. Greetings from New York City. It is hot and humid and sticky today.
Oh, boy. Well, up here in Boston, it is too. We're recording this at the end of July 2024. By the time this airs, it'll be fall and nice and crisp. But you know, we're here today not to do our typical work from the inside out interview, although it's still totally relevant to what we like to talk about here. But thank you so much for being here again, Ruth, because I'm a huge Ruth Gotian fan through and through. And I'm really, really delighted by this new book that you and another former Work from the Inside guest co-wrote together, Andy Lapata. And so tell us about the book. And, you know, I've been following your work in mentoring for quite some time and just want to hear more about the book and want to take a deep dive into some of these ideas that you've been working on and now have written a book about.
Sure. And how does mentoring tie into high achievers? Well, look, I have had the opportunity to interview some of the highest achievers of our generation, the biggest thinkers, the biggest achievers. And one of the things that they all had in common was that they realized that they don't know what they don't know. Mm-hmm. And in order to know more and take those blinders off, they surrounded themselves not with one, but with a team of mentors, people who will guide them, people who will pick them up when they're having a bad day, people who can look beyond the horizon that they can see for themselves. And if this is what Olympians and astronauts are doing, why do the rest of us think that we don't need these people? And we know mentoring works. All the research over a quarter of a century has shown that those who are mentored out-earn and outperform those who don't. But if you ask anyone who's ever participated in a mentoring program at work, it's usually not great. It is pretty vanilla. So my co-author, Andy Lapata, who is Europe's premier expert in developing and strategizing around professional relationships, Andy and I collaborated to write this book, Financial Times Guide to Mentoring, because at the core of everything, mentoring is a professional relationship. It is not a transactional relationship. So you need to know how to do it well. So it was really the perfect blend where I could bring in that academic expertise and the citations and the statistics and the strategy. And then Andy can also give us the strategy around developing those personal relationships. It made so much perfect sense for the two of us to work on this book together. And I'm excited.
Well, I am too, because I find in my coaching practice and my work with organizations, I am seeing I would say a dearth, a need for more mentoring across the board. I think people are hungry for this, because you're absolutely right. And I love what you just said about mentoring is not transactional.
Yes.
And I think that might be something that people misunderstand, especially in the workplace. Some of the mentoring programs that I've seen, or clients of mine who've said, I was assigned a mentor, but we sat and we talked and we didn't connect, or it seems like the matches were somewhat random.
Well, let's talk about those assignments, right?
Yeah.
Because they're usually completely random. It's as if saying, Tammy, you have glasses. Ruth, you have glasses. Therefore, you should be connected and match as mentor and mentee. Or you're both from Boston, or you both went to, whatever school. But you know what? Not everyone from the same state, not everyone who attended the same school is the same. So matching them up based on that is ridiculous. It's completely random.
Right.
And in fact, we know that 61% of positive mentoring relationships happen organically. They're not matched. So what we need to do within organizations, and this book, this Financial Times Guide to Mentoring, is really a playbook for organizations and mentors on how to do it well in the workforce. So instead of randomly matching it, people, what we need to do is create these opportunities for people to organically meet people and organically have these conversations to see where they gel. And it might start over, oh, you were both in Paris for the Olympics? That could be the kickoff for the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to be, oh, you're both in marketing. Because you know what? You might have great connection and find a great mentor with someone who is not even in your industry. So the key is to learn where these interesting people are and how to connect with them. And I do want to share a resource with your listeners. If they are like most people who have trouble just connecting with people and having conversations when you don't know the person and you really don't want to talk about the weather, I have put together 13 of my favorite, what I call conversation starters, how to kick off conversations. Your listeners can go, it's on my website, Ruth Gotian, RuthGotian, ruthgotian.com/conversation.
Great. Well, and we will put that in the show notes. And I don't know, I might have to rent one of those planes with a banner behind that and fly that over a few cities, because you think I'm kidding. I have this conversation with people constantly who are really looking for that kind of, it's not even like you said, it's not even just having the expertise, around a particular profession. They're looking for connection and guidance, but it doesn't have to be exactly on a particular path. And in fact, something you said earlier already is, about athletes. It really applies to anyone. It's when we say mentors, we mean mentors, plural.
Yes.
It's not just about, finding a mentor for your life. It's really about, hopefully and I agree with the organic part, finding a number of different people who, are in, as some people might even talk about, having your own personal board of directors, so to speak, right? And thinking about various people in your life who have offered you insights and wisdom that will take you forward and give you that, that boost. Sometimes they might give you information of substance, But sometimes it's just a word or two that just gets you going forward. But you also know they're cheering you on at the same time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I could give you a perfect example. I'll actually give you two. I think the last time I was on your show, we talked about people who believed in me and saw things I didn't see in myself.
Yeah.
And I know we talked about my grandma, and we talked about my doctoral dissertation advisor. And, these were all people who planted the seed of, Ruth, you write beautifully. But I hated writing. I hated writing because I felt it was so constraining. I was always responding to somebody else's prompt. And I didn't like it. But then the opportunity came. I saw all these people who were writing these kind of business books. And I approached one of them and I said, well, what's it like? And they told me what it was like. And then an acquisitions editor reached out to me about writing a book, and that led to the Success Factor. And when I wrote the proposal, I actually showed it to my dissertation advisor because she had written books and she helped me wordsmith it, right? She had that experience. When it came time to negotiate the contract, I showed it to my mentor, who's a lawyer, not my mentor who wrote books, because she knew how to write, but he knew contracts inside and out. So I was tapping into the right people for the right expertise.
Right.
And there's not a one person that can do everything for you. No one has that many superpowers, but you can have endless people on your mentoring team. There is no number that is a set number. The more diverse, the better. So you can have these different perspectives because you don't know what you don't know. And these people will plant seeds and will push you forward in ways you didn't even know were possible.
So that brings another question to mind, because I think that a lot of people listening to this, and I know that your book also provides tremendous guidance for people who are trying to implement mentoring programs in organizations. And I know that a lot of people listening to this may be individuals who are seeking mentors or would like to seek mentors, but don't always have the confidence or they feel, it's not even shy. They just don't know where to begin or how to start looking, or they're not sure what they need, but they know they need something. Yes. And what would be some key, you have the conversation starters. Thank you for that. But some people, even with that, might shrink away a little bit. What would be something that could help somebody get a little bit unglued when they know this would be good for them? That medicine is good for you. It doesn't taste that bad.
Right. Well, I think, first of all, remember when I said, don't make it transactional. I think if you take that weight off of you, then it'll be a lot easier. When you walk into a room, do you say, I am going to find my new best friend?
Yeah,
probably not. Are you going to say, I'm going to meet my future husband here? Probably not.
Right.
When you take that pressure off, you're just there to meet interesting people and hear and see where you connect and what you have in common and what's the overlap and what's their thinking like. And when it's somebody like that, you just want to be in their orbit. You just want to learn from them. And there's nothing at the end of the session or the end of the networking event or whatever it is that you say, okay, we're exchanging numbers and now we're mentor and mentee.
Right,
no,
right.
That's not how it works.
Right,
that's the start. You are building a relationship.
Right.
And they might not even be the right person for you, but they can recommend someone who might be, because they will say something and you'll say, I never thought of it that way. But now you can't get that idea out of your head. And now you want to think and build on that over and over and over again. So now you start asking questions and now you start reading about it. And now the next time you see them, Tammy, I've really been thinking about what you said about whatever. I cannot get that idea out of my head. I read about it. I read the articles by so-and-so. I watched the videos. I listened to the podcasts. And I'm really thinking of implementing a version of that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not quite sure how to do it, but I would like to try it. Do you know who might be the best person for me to talk to figure out what I'm missing from the research that I've already done? Tammy, do you have 20 minutes that maybe we can chat about this? I would really love to hear your perspective on it. Now I've given you context. Now I've given you a time frame. Now I've shown you that I've done the work. I didn't just say, help me with my career.
Right.
Well,
right.
what part?
Right.
There's context to it. There's a time frame. It doesn't sound like an obligation. It even would make you a little bit excited because you see here is somebody who is on the verge of doing something great. You want to go on that ride with them.
Mm-hmm.
You want to be able to help them. You want to be that wind beneath their wings because you see that they want this so badly and they're willing to do the work. When you can show people that, the mentors will find you. Trust me.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. And I think even if you like you said, you don't know what you don't know, even if you're still feeling like you're in that fuzzy space a little bit, like, I know I'm looking for something. Maybe you have at least a little bit of an idea, whatever context you can set, that's enough, right?
That's right. It's context and show that you've done the work. You have already done your due diligence. That is critical.
Yeah.
If you're walking in with a blank piece of paper, that shows that you've put in no effort. And if you're not willing to put in effort in your career, why should anyone else?
Right. That's right. So, so let's talk for a moment. I'm going to take a little bit of a turn here. So you and Andy Lapata wrote this book together. And you had now this also ties in with this whole thing going on in our world now with people working, hybrid, remotely, all this stuff. The two of you had never met in person until after you were done writing the book.
Yeah. Not till after we submitted the manuscript. Isn't that wild?
Well, it is, although I've never met you in person, and yet I feel like I know you. You and I have talked several times, and I feel, and I don't know if it's, because it's you, Ruth, the kind of person you are, the way you connect so nicely, but I'm curious, what was it like to write a whole book with somebody across the pond?
Yeah.
And not meet in person till afterwards, and to decide to take something on. I mean, we're not just talking about a couple of conversations. We're talking about taking on a huge project.
Yes. And it's someone I had never really worked with before. We both write in English, but he writes in British English and I write in American English.
Right. There's a difference.
Right. And we have time zone differences. So the reason we did it is because the opportunity came up to write this book about mentoring. And Andy approached me. I had known Andy, and it was actually through Dory Clark, who we both know. When he wrote one of his previous books, what Dory so beautifully does is she will hold up a book, post it on social media, congratulations to so-and-so on your recent book, et cetera. And it was his Connected Leadership book. And I work a lot in the leadership development space. So I was curious and I reached out to him on LinkedIn, and he doesn't just accept LinkedIn requests. You have to earn it. I have learned. So he said, well, why did you want to connect with me? And I told him, and that led to a Zoom, and we instantly connected. And then I was a guest on his podcast, and I had to show he was a guest on my show. And we started conversing more and more and more together. Meanwhile, he really saw my work on mentoring that I've been working on for years and publishing and posting about on social media. And I saw his work, and I was learning more about his work about professional relationships. And I believe, as Andy does, that if you don't have a proper professional relationship as the core, as the anchor, that mentoring relationship is not going to work.
Mm-hmm.
So it really was the perfect blend. Now, what I had learned in the process, it actually came out better than I had expected. And I think we're even better friends now than we were before. We were sort of acquaintances before, right? But he is very methodical in the way he does things. When I write a book, I sit in front of the computer and I write.
Mm-hmm.
He plans out every section of every chapter. So we had these Zoom meetings to plan it out and where the stories would work and where we're going to input them. And I have people I can contact. You have people you can contact. I learned how to do that. It is still very unnatural for me to do it, but there is a time and place. So I got to learn a lot from him in the process. And I said, look, I read a lot of leadership books. I am underwhelmed by most of them because A, they're repetitive. B, they're based on a lot of smoke mirrors and hand waving.
Mm-hmm.
I'm an academic. If we're going to make a claim, we need to back it up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So every claim that we make is backed up by sound research.
Yeah.
And it's not an academic book. Nobody wants to read that. But the statements are there with the citations to back up what we're saying. So when I say 61% of mentoring relationships are organic, or 37% of people, that's it, actually have mentors, even though 76 know and understand the benefits of it. That's based on research. That's a lot more than everyone I know thinks that mentoring is a good idea, right?
Right, right.
So that really worked out well. And if we didn't agree on something, we talked it out.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you agree? Would you consider this? How about this? And there were only 2 times that we disagreed. And we actually wrote it in the book where we disagreed.
Interesting.
And we explained the different perspectives so that the reader can make their informed decision.
Nice.
Right?
I love it.
And then obviously there's different ways to market a book. And I knew what would work in the US and he knew what would work well in Europe. So we got to blend the two. And now our book is the official book of National Mentoring Day.
Well, somehow that doesn't really surprise me. And yet, congratulations. That's terrific.
Thank you. We're excited. We're excited for our partnership.
How did it turn out that it was published by Financial Times per se? I'm curious. I was curious about that.
How that pink newspaper came to publish a book.
Yeah.
So the Financial Times has an imprint called Pearson. And they publish many, many books. And they're essentially like the Harvard Business Review of Europe. And they have a series of books: Financial Times Guide to Investing, Financial Times Guide to Strategy, Financial Times Guide to Coaching. And Andy noticed they didn't have one on mentoring. And he previously had published with them. So he reached out to the acquisitions editor and made the case. And we had to write and rewrite and rewrite and rewrite again our proposal. So anyone who thinks it's one and done, no. We worked over a year on that proposal. And then they said, okay, now we understand the difference between mentoring and coaching. This definitely has a place. This is going to fill a need. So far, sales are showing that it definitely does fill a need. So we're excited about that.
Well, and also you are an amazing champion of mentoring. You have been for many, many years. So I'm not surprised.
I know it works.
Yeah,
I know it works. And not just from my own mentors who have completely transformed my life. I would not be here talking to you if it wasn't for my mentors. But I also know that the research shows how well it works, that those who were mentored have higher salaries, get promoted more often, have lower cases of burnout. And it helps the mentors as well. They get promoted more often. And for anyone running mentoring programs and trying to retain employees in this challenging job market, mentoring is the best retention tool out there, period.
That makes perfect sense.
Those who are mentored are loyal to the organization.
Well, and that ties right in with the research that shows that people who feel they're valued and that they're learning something has a lot to do with retention. I would think mentoring ties beautiful, and not only ties in with that, is probably the force behind all of that.
That's right.
In many ways, right?
It is ongoing. It's bespoke to the employee. And it's so much better than any yoga and any ice cream social that you can have, because this is tailor-made to the employee. We just need to teach people how to do it well and effectively.
Right, right. And I think it also, there's a couple of, so teaching people how to do mentoring well and teaching people how to access mentoring well.
That's correct.
Right? So in terms of an individual, let's say, because I think a lot of our listeners are those people, what would be a first step they might take in terms of even thinking through, let's say somebody is starting to feel a little burnt out, or they're trying to decide what's next for them. What would be a couple of a first step or two that they might take in thinking about who they might want to seek out as a mentor, or what they might do? Let's say they're not big on events, like going to, what other things might they be thinking about?
Yep. So we actually teach people how to develop a mentoring team. That is part of the book.
Great.
First, you need to identify your goal. Then you need to come up with a plan. And then there's multiple layers of people that you can reach out to. Because if you stop and think about it, at least 250 people. I gave this talk once to the Oprah Winfrey Leadership Scholars, who were college students being supported by Oprah. And they didn't believe me. They said, we're in college. We don't know 250 people.
Oh.
And I called them up one by one. And I said, who'd you go to school with? Who do you go, whatever religious organization you go to, how many people are there? How many people in your family? How many people at your Thanksgiving dinner? And before they knew it, they had well over 250 people.
Yeah.
And that was without breaking a sweat.
Yeah.
So we talk through how to find people who are first degree within your network, second degree professional, people who are a little bit of a reach, but they're 1 to 2 steps away,
right,
or 1 to 2 introductions. You can actually meet them. And look, there are people within your organization, outside of your organization, people who are senior to you, at your level, and junior to you as well. And you want people who are outside your industry, inside your industry. I mean, the list goes on and on. Your alma mater. There's so many places where you can find a mentor. Now, if your listeners want to do that exercise, and I call it the bullseye exercise of how to develop their own mentoring team, because we could do a whole episode just on that. There's a worksheet they can download with very, very simple instructions. RuthGotian.com/mentoring team, one word.
That's going into the show notes too. Great. That's wonderful. So important. And I think that's the kind of thing where I think people need to do something like that, even if they have a great mentoring program, even inside their organization. And I wanted to just shine a light on this notion that, because I think some people think that, that their supervisor is supposed to be their mentor, right? Or inside only. And it's like, no. The whole point, and I think you've pointed this out already, but I want to just kind of really put a pin in this, that, some of your best mentoring relationships very likely will be outside your organization in some respects. What do you think about that?
And I want to give you a couple of reasons why your boss should not be your mentor, or at least not your only mentor.
Right.
2 things. 1, if your boss is your mentor and they do such a good job mentoring you that you then leave the organization, they then have to fill your role. And they personally might have to do it, putting more on their plate. So it might not be in their best interest for them to be such a good mentor for you. That's number 1. Number 2, if your boss is your mentor and they leave the organization because they get promoted, does that mean you don't have a mentor at work anymore?
Mm-hmm.
So it goes both ways. And this is why you don't want them to be your only mentor. So we talk about that also about when your boss leaves. Andy and I wrote about it with Dr. Chevy Cook, who is a lieutenant colonel in the Army, working at the Pentagon now. We wrote a piece for Fast Company about it. And this is why your mentor might be more important than your leader, because your mentor is there long-term while your leader may leave. Right? Because we know, I am from the generation where you stay with the same spouse and same employer your entire career. But now people are hopping around. I read that the statistic was every 4.2 years. I thought it was half that. But still, 4 years is considered very low for any Gen Xers. But that's what's happening. People are now changing. So that's why it's also important to find people outside your organization, not just your boss.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, Ruth, if somebody wants to learn more, other than buying your book, going to your website,
yes,
is there a go-to place, or is there anything coming up that they should be paying attention to with regard to your work and your book? Because I also want to shine a light on the success factor, even though we already spoke about this in the previous episode that we did. I think that they tie together beautifully hand in hand. So I don't want to neglect your other award-winning book and the fabulous articles that you write. It's amazing to me that you have a full-time engagement at Cornell Weill, and you've done all the speaking and the writing and everything. But I also know you're just so passionate about all these things. And so where else can people find you?
Where can they find it all?
Where can they come and shake your hand?
Well, look, if you go on my website, you have a bunch of information there. You can sign up for the newsletters. I always try to give things away in the newsletter as well, or let people know about opportunities that are happening. So definitely check that out. Also, always with some sort of leadership development tip. All of social media is great. LinkedIn is where I'm the most, Ruth Gotian. And there I also post my articles regularly, plus some other tips. And the book is called Financial Times Guide to Mentoring. I wrote it with Andy Lapata. And we have a website for the book, mentoring-guide.com. That's mentoring-guide.com. You can download the first chapter. You can find a ton of resources, from books and articles and podcast interviews, a LinkedIn Learning course I did about mentoring, resources to some of the people featured in the book. Oh, by the way, Steve Kerr, the coach of the Golden State Warriors, wrote the foreword to the book. It's all there. And if you're in a mentoring relationship and want to see how impactful it really is, there's a free assessment you can do. It's 15 quick questions.
Oh, my goodness.
You don't have to write anything. You just click some things on a Likert scale, and it'll tell you how effective your mentoring relationship is. It is all there at mentoring-guide.com.
I'm a little overwhelmed now with all these amazing resources, and yet I want to tell everyone, don't walk, run to these things. And I actually mean that, because these are the kinds of things, and I want to emphasize this. This isn't just about when you're starting out in your career. And as those of you who are listening are, hearing Ruth, who's, we even mentioned her, the 50 over 50, Ruth's been working for a few years, and she talks about her mentors. We all rely on mentors, those of us who've been around the block a few times. That it is never too late to find a great mentor to help you think about what's next for you. And I want to emphasize that this isn't just for those 20-somethings just finishing up school. So, and I know that, Andy and Ruth's book really does cover all the different generations in the workforce. And I wanted to just point that out because I think that's really, really important for people to understand that this isn't just, for people who, are starting out. We all don't know what we don't know.
I tell people if a Nobel Prize winner, an astronaut, an NBA champion can have mentors, why do the rest of us feel that we don't need one?
Right. I mean, we're always wanting to grow and learn and develop ourselves, even if we excel in many areas. Who doesn't want to keep learning? Right? Well, Ruth, is there anything else you want to make sure that we add here that I may not have asked you about? Because I could talk to you forever.
There's so many things, but I think if people go check out the book, Financial Times Guide to Mentoring, they will find it all and more. And you know what? If there's something they want to learn more about in that space, they can send me a message on LinkedIn, and I will do my best to write an article to address that question.
Wow. Well, that's a very generous offer. And I know from experience that when Ruth says something like that, she really means it. So, Ruth Gotian, thank you so much for being here today. This was really an important conversation for anybody who wants to work from the inside out, of course, and who wants to move their work and their careers forward and to excel at what they're doing. So I appreciate you taking the time to talk with me about all of this.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be back.
Thanks for sticking around to the end of my interview with Ruth Gotian. What is your key takeaway from our conversation? If you are interested in any of the resources mentioned in today's podcast, you can find them in the show notes on my website at tammygoulerloeb.com/podcast. Just look for episode 260. And while you're there, you can also subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any episodes. If you're feeling it, please help me to inspire more people to grow their careers by clicking on the Apple Podcasts button right there, and then leave an honest rating and brief review. It really helps boost the visibility of the podcast, which will then help more people grow their careers. Are you anticipating your next professional move? Check out my award-winning book, Work from the Inside Out, Break Through 9 Common Obstacles and Design a Career That Fulfills You. It's available through my website, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, independent bookstores, or through your local library. You can also help sustain this podcast by buying me a cup of coffee at buymeacoffee.com/TammyGL. Since this podcast is self-funded, your support is acknowledged and appreciated. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, it's never too late or too impossible to increase your sense of fulfillment and satisfaction in your work and other meaningful activities. Let me know how it's going for you. I'd love to hear from you. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to the Work from the Inside Out podcast. For more information, you can find us at www.workfromtheinsideout.com.